Netflix is massive. In fact, it's probably one of not only the biggest streaming services in the world, but also could well be the most popular form of entertainment, especially amongst younger people. Young people between the ages of 15 to 25 especially are seen as the target demographic for Netflix, and as a result of this, Netflix has used this information to create a new content specifically targeted towards younger people. Two of Netflix's shows that perfectly fit this description are Sex Education and 13 Reasons Why. Now, whilst reading the synopsis of these two shows, you may not think they are in any way similar. They are both extremely similar in a number of ways. For example, it's a show set in a high school that has quite unrealistic issues. In Sex Ed, it's people shagging on the school grounds. Tee-hee. And in 13 Reasons Why, well, it's basically everything that happens in the show, from the cliques to the themes to the, I don't know, fucking murders and riots happening. As well as this, both of the show's main characters are very similar. They're both relatively awkward and adorable teens who aren't either popular or unpopular. They're just sort of there. And they both have a very unique relationship with a female character in the show that drives the plot forward. Now, despite all the apparent similarities in the show, one of these is regarded as sweet, endearing and heartfelt, while the other, well, sucks. Now, what could be the reason for these apparently similar shows to have such drastic differences in quality, despite the obvious fact that one was made in a far superior country? Well, the main difference that I've noticed is the theme of the shows, and how one show is built around a main theme, whilst the other attempts to force as many dark and depressing themes into the show as possible. Sex Education's whole theme is based around teenagers and young adults' relationships towards sex. The show advocates for young people to have confidence in their bodies and sexual health and well-being, and the show is written around this theme. 13 Reasons Why, on the other hand, seems to be built with the purpose of trying to put as many dark and upsetting topics into one show without thinking how to make it fit with the material or the characters and the world that they have established. 13 Reasons Why in the first season alone deals with subject matter like rape, sexual assault, drug abuse, depression, bullying and suicide. Cramming this many dark subjects into a teen show leads the first season feeling rather bloated and confusing. Then in the later seasons the show becomes almost cartoonish in how outlandish it becomes, as it has things like murders and police cover-ups, people surviving shooting themselves in the head, people jumping in front of armed shooters, lockdown simulations that lead to traumatized children, and there's even a disgusting scene in which the character of Tyler is beaten and sodomized with a broom handle in extremely disturbing detail that I will not be showing. Now, Sex Education does occasionally deal with serious subject matter, like for example the sexual assault that happens on Amy. And sometimes Sex Education does go a bit over. The difference in this would be that Sex Education doesn't take itself too seriously, whilst 13 Reasons Why does. I mean, obviously handling these subject material, they take it seriously, but the whole broad aspect of the show isn't super serious and dark all the time. Whilst Sex Education is self-aware and comedic with its more absurd storylines, 13 Reasons Why insists on being so arrogant about itself and treats itself like it's something more important than it actually is. This really dark subject matter targeted at teens is something that I never understood. As teenage and young adults, time in your life is very confusing and scary, as people are trying to figure out who they are and what they want to be in life. This is why shows like Sex Education are so good, as it tells people to be confident in themselves, whilst 13 Reasons Why focus scary and dark parts of life in excruciating detail. Now, to better prove my point, we can look at some individual characters and compare their similarities and differences to see how different the shows are. First, I'm going to be looking at the two awkward social reject male protagonists who fall in love with people that ends up motivating their decisions throughout the show. Otis Milburn and Clay Jensen. Now, I've listed both the similarities, and there are a lot of them. There are a few significant differences that make them very different from one another. Like, for example, in Sex Education, Otis actually somewhat gets his girl by the third season, whilst Clay doesn't, I guess is the best way to put it. I mean, I guess he tries to neck on with a ghost in the final season, but that doesn't really count. But another big character difference between the two shows is that Otis, throughout all that happens within the show, always remains somewhat hopeful and happy. Clay, on the other hand, becomes sort of a pessimist at the end of the first season, then in the later seasons just goes from being a whiny little bitch to a complete wreck on the brink of psychosis. That's cheerful. Then we have Maeve Wiley versus Hannah Baker, the two female protagonists of the story. Now the main difference between the two of these characters is very obvious. Now of course the obvious difference I'm referring to is that, well, Maeve Wiley has coloured hair, and possibly less / wrists. But of course, seeing that she has coloured hair, you'd be right in assuming that Maeve Wiley is quite sassy and rude. But she's also once a big softie. You get to know her with a big brain and a passion for literature. She's a deep, three-dimensional character. Hannah Baker, meanwhile, isn't even really considered a one-dimensional character because she isn't really a character. She's more of a plot point and isn't really given any sort of character growth, personality, and to be honest, the only real motivation she has for any of her actions is the countless cruel, heartless and highly illegal things that she is subjected to whilst at Liberty High. In fact, the only reason Hannah Bacon is in this story in any way is so that she can cause a chain of events after she decides to make bacon out of her arms and subsequently dies. And finally, we've got Eric and Tony, the gay foreigners as I like to call them, who are best friends to their respective main characters. Both of these characters are seen as the support for the main characters and allow for easy exposition of the plot. I guess the only real difference that I can think of is that Tony is actually hard as fuck, whilst Eric seems like about as intimidating as a senile old woman with diarrhea. But again, it comes down to this case that Eric has personality and an interesting side story of his own, with his love triangle with Raheem and Adam Groff, who we'll talk about later. On the other hand, Tony was only really written into the show as a means of justifying the plot, as he serves as the protector of the tapes in the first season, and then has really not much else in the way of plot or character, aside from the writers making him gay, of course. The final characters I would like to discuss would be the bullies / villains of the story, Adam and Bryce. Now, Adam is actually only seen as the villain, per se, in the first season, when he ruthlessly bullies Eric. However, this bullying is shown to be the result of his insecurities, as he was bullied by his dad, and as a result, bullies Eric, as he views Eric as a weak individual. Bryce also has daddy issues, but unlike Adam, has no redeemable qualities, despite how hard the writers tried to give him some. Adam in the later season develops a relationship with Eric and becomes more calm and caring, as he develops more comfort in who he is. Whilst Adam becomes a little sweetheart, Bryce is continuously shown to be the villain of the story through his many deplorable acts like sharing inappropriate photos of Hannah to the entire school, raping not one but two of the main female characters in the first season alone, assaulting countless people, lying under oath, blackmailing people, and threatening to kill a child. How in the ever-loving fuck are the writers even attempting to create sympathy for this character when he has committed so many appalling crimes that you probably have to spend his entire life in prison had Alex not have killed him first? I guess the main thing I'm trying to highlight in all these characters in Sex Education is that they all have their own distinct personalities that make them who they are. Whereas in 13 Reasons Why, all the characters are just really traumatized kids that all have the same experiences, and they only really serve the purpose of allowing the writers to shove as many dark themes into this bloated mess of a show as possible. Sex Education has personality. 13 Reasons Why has an agenda. Sex Education has a positive message, that it's okay to be you and to embrace everything weird and wonderful about yourself and display it to the world. 13 Reasons Why has the message, yeah, life just fucking sucks, man. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like. Subscribe as well to stay up to date with all the content I release, when I release eventually in 4 months from now. Thank you all for watching today. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.